So does Washington really have the political will to reduce the deficit and come up with a tax cut plan? Or with the economy growing, does it even matter? Joining us right now, Jordan Goodman, author of Fast Profits in Hard Times, and Dean Zerby, former senior counsel to the Senate Finance Committee. Great to see both you guys. Dean, lawmakers, they have some really tough decisions ahead, let's face it. My question is, can they and will they be willing to make these decisions?
I think that's a good question. I think they will. I think it's going to take more than anything leadership at the top from the president to say, here's where I want to go, here's where I want to be, here's what I want to accomplish it. And I think if you see that, then I do think that you'll get the will from Washington to do it. I see some good signs, too, that you've got congressmen, the new Congress coming in, looking very aggressively at oversight, taking a hard look at the spending programs that are out there. You need to establish that grounding, if you will, to justify cutting the deficit, to make people comfortable that it's the right decisions and it makes sense what we're doing. So I think there is the political will there, but it's going to take some real leadership to make it happen.
All right. I mean, Jordan, let me stay with that, the political will issue, because I think the political will comes from outside Washington, from the voters. This was a Tea Party election, and the mantra was smaller government, lower spending, and lower taxes. Now, I could tweak the Bowles Commission a little bit, but on the whole, I think it's a huge step in the right direction. Will the voters put the heat on Washington to do the right things here?
Well, they should. I think what's happening, though, is that the lobbyists are going to overwhelm the will of the people. I mean, I do not think they have the political will to do what the Erskine-Bowles-Simpson Commission is talking about, which I think are some terrific ideas. They're actually very growth-oriented ideas when you get down to it. But the will of the people, I talk to a lot of people. I have a website, moneyanswers.com. I get emails all the time. People say, do something bold. We really want to cut the deficit. We do not want to be having $1.5 trillion deficits as far as the eye can see. And clearly we have to make some bold moves here, but I think the politicians are going to get overwhelmed by the lobbyists.
So if that's the situation, Dean, dare I ask, what happens if indeed there is not the political will? We end up with gridlock and no decisions are made and the deficit is not reduced significantly. Do we end up, dare I ask, in a European-style situation that eventually needs a bailout?
Well, hopefully, yes, we're not going the way of Ireland. I think, at a minimum, if we're not going to have the will to cut the spending, at least looking, and I think it was well said that at least looking at the pro-growth tax policies that are being put forward out there is at least maybe one way of getting there, that we can at least get our tax policy situated that it's encouraging new businesses, encouraging hiring, and encouraging growth. It could be at least a half a loaf in terms of getting things moving forward.
Well, that brings us to the second part of this debate here, and that's the question of, does it even matter? Does Washington even need to do anything? If you have a pro-growth scenario, and we're assuming that those tax cuts are extended, and the economy looks like it really is in a real recovery, then, Jordan, do we even need to see much happen in Washington?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Because if we don't do anything, we're going to continue to have these $1.5 trillion deficits. And there are a lot of things in here which would really help cut the deficit. I think the federal budget is way out of control. And they're talking about cutting 10% of the federal workforce. I think that would be good. Farm subsidies. I mean, agricultural prices are way high. Why are we spending billions of dollars subsidizing farm subsidies? We have defense places all around the world. Why do we need huge defense bill in Germany or something? The Cold War was over 20 years ago. There's all kinds of things I think you could cut and actually help bring down the budget deficit. And the public is in front. Larry, you're exactly right. The public wants this, and the lobbyists, everything they talked about, the lobbyists are jumping all over it. Social Security, raise it from 67 to 69.
That's the thing.
ARP said no.
I like those odds, Dean Zerby. I think this is going to be a real bad year for lobbyists. In fact, the last couple of years have not been kind to lobbyists, and in some sense, this Tea Party election was aimed at shutting down the lobbyists who represent special interest and not the average voter. And I want to ask you this. Ken Conrad, the Senate Budget Committee chairman, and Paul Ryan, the new House Budget Committee chairman, are both members of the Bowles Commission. It occurs to me, why won't they use the Bowles Commission as a starting point for their own budgets and may wind up working together and carry this ball forward in the next session?
I think that's a great idea, and I think they can look at that, and I think they actually need to go far beyond what the Deficit Commission did, looking at tax expenditures. One of the things we don't look at is saying, okay, take housing, for for instance. We spend billions of dollars on housing. We also have billions in tax expenditures through the low-income housing tax credit, looking at those and looking beyond just even what they've done. But you're right, it's a good starting point. It's been a good effort, and they can use that as a base to go forward and move forward in terms of looking at cutting the deficit. I do agree, too, though, that I think that by highlighting where wasteful spending is and what's going on, you can kind of keep the lobbyists down their holes, if you will. I think people do recognize here in Washington that the elections were a very strong voice for keeping government spending in check, to take a hard look at what's going on. So hopefully they'll get that message, the two Budget Committee chairmen, and move forward. But I think it takes, too, the administration coming forward and showing leadership as well, too, and not being passive.
That's the missing link. You
Larry,
are
the
so
thing
right.
is, I think you're wrong about things. The lobbyists bought this election, so I think it's been a very good year for lobbyists.
Right.
The reason that what happened was there a huge amount of spending because of the Citizens United
I got to
bill.
get out. I think the lobbyists are going to get whack-a-mole. I really don't think they bought this election, but I appreciate it very much, Jordan and Dean. Thank you for your inputs.